So we're going to start the interviews now, and I am very happy to introduce Rhonda Penner to you, and she is the mother of Alec, who goes to the St.Amant school. So we had a chance to visit the other day. Can you tell everybody here a little bit about yourself, your family, and how you came to be associated with St.Amant, Rhonda?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, my son Alec goes to school here, but our journey started a very long time ago. When he was 18 months, I noticed there was some pretty significant delays with him. And I worked in child development, and so I wrote a report as a professional, not a mom, and so convinced the pediatrician to send him for an assessment. So while we were waiting for that assessment, I did my research and looked at the ABA program here. So when that diagnosis came, this was my next stop after the doctor's office before we went home. So Alec started ABA when he was 2 years and 1 day old, and we had 6 years of ABA, and he transitioned into school and with a lot of supports, and then we had some BACS involvement with some behavioral support at school. And then when he was about 11 years old, he started having seizures, which isn't uncommon for children with autism. But there were some other things going on with him that seemed quite odd. And so the seizures actually led to an MRI. And in the meantime, it became very apparent that his time in public school was spent either sleeping or freaking out. And he wasn't a very aggressive child, but he started hurting other kids and hurting himself an awful lot. And despite 3 education assistants and a service dog attached to him, his days were very, very difficult. So in May of that year, we got the actual diagnosis that Alec actually had septo-optic dysplasia, which affected 3 different areas of his brain and caused the autism, but also affected his pituitary gland and his visual nerves. So a lot of those things, as we learned more and more about them, started to put things into perspective. And a lot of stuff that we thought was just autism related was actually physiological. So at that point, the first place that I called was St.Amant about how do we get him into school here. The public school knew that they couldn't support him anymore. And they loved him dearly. We lived in a French community, and his paternal family was all French, and the school was in that small French community, so they really embraced Alec, but they also knew that they weren't doing him the justice that he needed to be able to move forward and continue to develop and grow. So throughout the summer, with nowhere to go for September when school started, I asked St.Amant to please accept him, at least temporarily. And so you did. He came here on September 15th of that year, and very quickly realized that this is where he needed to be, at least for the time being. And as things continued to progress over the next few months, he also ended up in a wheelchair by June of that year, by the way. He developed something called late onset Blount's disease, and his leg bones went from being completely straight and a child that lived on a trampoline to being bowed 45 degrees on one leg and 25 degrees on the other leg, and he could barely walk. So coming here and having all of those access, the accessibility, as well as the services like occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and all of the supports here were huge. And over the last 2 years, he's had 2 leg reconstruction surgeries, and when we were faced with that, knowing that we couldn't care for him at home, he would be non-weight bearing at least for 3 months. And at the point of the first surgery, they didn't even know if he would ever walk again. So there was just no way that we could care for him at home. And so I approached St.Amant again and said, is there some way that he could come and stay here? And so after some meetings and some discussion, they once again welcomed him with open arms, and he lived on 3 East for 4.5 months. And he's stubborn and determined, and it paid off. He learned to walk again and came home. And then just recently he was here for another 2.5 months and was able to come home. And the second time, St.Amant really, really advocated for me with disability services. So they put a chairlift in my house temporarily, apparently. But nonetheless, they put a chairlift in so that he could come home sooner and manage our 2-story home much more safely.
Okay. Thank you for sharing all of that. In that whole journey, your journey so far with St.Amant, is there one kind of defining moment that kind of stands out for you?
I think at every turn and every change and every new service that we accessed, is it still on?
Yeah.
Okay. That we accessed, absolutely, there was always a defining moment. When he was coming to school, just having the clothing optional room during the tour, I'm like, that's Alec. You know, when he came to live here and I was having panic attacks the first few days after not having my baby at home and trying to carry on with a full-time job and another child and life in general, they were always very reassuring. They treated him like family. When he wouldn't eat what was being served, people were always willing to share, which was wonderful. But I think the most defining moment was probably my first experience when our ABA consultant came to our house to meet Alec. And it was a particularly challenging day for Alec. He had no interest in doing the assessments and the testing, was totally uncooperative, was running all around, jumping off furniture, and even hitting the consultant. And he was not a very aggressive child, but really had no interest in what she had to offer that day. And I broke down and started to cry and said, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, my child is behaving this way. And she stood up and she gave me a hug and she said, it's okay, we're gonna do this together.
Okay. Just give you a second. How does St.Amant Services impact Alec specifically now?
This is Alec's home. He lives with us and he loves being at home with his family, his biological family, but the people here, and you know, when I was watching people walk in and thinking of all of the faces that are familiar and all the different services that he's accessed, that this really is where he feels comfortable. He's accepted, he's supported, he's challenged. You know, he doesn't just get to do what he wants. And there's expectations, but there's understanding and acceptance and empathy and caring. There's always good things to say about him, no matter how difficult his day is. And last week I think he had a day where he was going around turning all the lights off around here. So, but there was still something positive that was being said. And so I think those, you know, that understanding really has made a difference in him feeling like he belongs somewhere.
Right on. Thank you for sharing that. What are your hopes for Alec?
I think that knowing with many of his physical, cognitive, behavioral, every kind of challenge you can think of, I think it's that he is treated with dignity and respect, and he definitely gets that from here. And also that he is able to carry on and have a life that's meaningful in his way, and meaningful in the sense that because he has been given so much love and acceptance, that he is able to give it to others. Even when you don't think he pays attention or he isn't acknowledging people, he really is.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any advice for us on how to make our services any more person-centered or family-centered?
I think, you know, as Alec approaches 16 years of age and we're looking at, you know, what happens next, how long he's able to be at home with his family, and the challenges that the stress and the difficulties that it has put on family members as well, and looking at what's going to be his best case scenario. Is just supporting the family in talking about what is able to provide, what St.Amant is able to continue to provide, moving into that next phase, and not having to worry about trying to figure out all the pieces myself. So family meetings, and I think that family-centered approach is very huge. And this isn't part of that question, but I just wanted to add in that, Alec's diagnosis and my involvement at that time, that I became involved with St.Amant and with the parent group, and then that led me to supporting other parents and being involved with MFeed and speaking. When Alec was going to school full-time, I went back and changed careers and took applied counseling, and I'm now running a social service agency downtown and supporting other people. And so it changed really me personally, but not only that, Alec's older brother is, sorry.
Okay.
He always says, Alec has given us a lot of challenges, and there's stuff that he missed out on. Because driving Alec around, because Colin wants to take lessons and join clubs and do this and that, wasn't always possible. And Colin said no matter how much of a challenge it was for our family and how many things he missed out, having a brother like Alec has truly changed the person that he is. And he's taking grade 12 psychology, and he approached St.Amant about his project being on autism and ABA, which they've been more than willing to help out with. But he's going into criminal justice and social services and psychology in university next year.
Thank you. You want to join me in thanking Rhonda? Rhonda, thank you so much for sharing your story. And this is a large group of people to be vulnerable with, but I think it's the right group of people to share your story with.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Yeah.
Good job. Good job, Amanda.
Okay, I'm going to invite Gary
Thank you very much.
and John. Gary, you're supported by St.Amant, and John is team leader, right?
That's
and
right.
we're going to hear a little bit about you first,
Yeah.
and then John's going to tell us a little bit about your journey together, right?
Okay, yeah.
So, Gary, we're here today to talk a little bit about your friendships in the community. Can you talk about that?
In the community, my friendship, my neighbors, and my neighbors, and all my roommates and my staff.
Right.
I'm getting along with them, and I'm more fun to be around them, and they're fun to be around me.
And what neighborhood are you in?
129 Yale Avenue in River Heights, Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Right. And how did you develop or make friends in your community?
Because I met different people, I shook hands and greeted people, asked them what their names was, and they asked me what my name was, and I introduced myself to other people, made new friends on the streets and on Stafford and on Ordinary.
And my understanding is, I'm not sure if it's every day or quite frequently, you take a walk down Corridon.
Most frequently I do.
Yeah. And you pop in and see some of the business people there, and you've got to know them and consider them to be some of your friends now, is that right?
Yes, I do, yeah. I make good friends, and I make good friends. I pop in once in a while to business places and see some new people and see sometimes dogs. I pet and put my hand down nicely and let them sniff my hand so they know who I am, and then I pet them after very nice and kindly and friendly, nicely.
There's a good example of dignity of risk right there.
That's right, it is. No, I'm just kidding.
Tell me a little bit about how it feels to have all these friends.
Oh, it feels good to have friends around me, and I'm friends with them.
Right on. what does it mean to you to be a good friend?
Well, when it was a good friend to be me, what does that mean?
Like, what do you have to do to be a good friend?
Well, I do things for people on the streets. I pick up garbage on corner and sometimes on Stafford. And if I see little sharp objects like pieces of glass or nails or little pieces of other things, I pick them up and throw them into garbage and think of people's safety and their concerns and love and concerns and their safety and their life and their life and keep people safe. Better be safe than destroyed.
So you care about your community?
Yes, I care about people that live around me, and I care about them, and they care about me.
Yeah. And you have a favorite place you like to pop into?
The Grove Pub and Restaurant.
The Grove Pub and Restaurant now is going to get
at Grove's Dinner.
Yeah. And you're fairly well known there, right?
Yes, very well known there, yeah.
For some, there's quite a few younger people here that may not remember the show Cheers. But there was a show when Norm walked in, right, to the pub. Everybody said, "Norm!" And I understand that sometimes when you walk into Grove, everybody's, "Gary!"
That's me, everyone. That's me, you know who. John, do you have anything to say?
So, thank you. I'm going to leave now.
Okay.
And Gary's going to take, because you're doing a great job.
Yes, I am. Thank you for coming. Thank everyone for coming, and thanks for your cooperation.
Yeah. So what do we want to hear from John? We want him to talk a little bit about how long he's known you and how he's been involved in supporting you. So John, do you mind?
I've known Gary since September 4th, 1979. 39 years.
39 years, everyone.
Gary?
Yeah. What'd you say, John?
Gary came to us as a 12-year-old. He had all the energy of a 12-year-old. In those days, that was before the DPA Act, we were focused completely on protection. All of the individuals were largely kept. We were in the community, but we were kept largely in our house. They went from our house out to the school bus, onto the school bus, to their school, back home. Occasionally, we would have the opportunity to take them out to maybe a movie on a Saturday afternoon. Gary couldn't be held like that. Gary needs a lot more than that. Gary wants to talk to the neighbors. Gary wants, and this dragged the rest of the residents along with us. Everyone more or less followed your example, didn't they, Gary?
That's right, John.
Constantly looking over the fence to the kids next door, looking over the fence and talking to people. Within a few weeks, Gary was wanting to cut other people's grass. Gary wanted to get out and do things. But there was always this bubble, always protect Gary and his roommates from dangers, making sure all of the paper was in place to make sure that Gary was taken care of.
That's right, John. You got that right.
Along comes the DPA, and we are in a position where we have to start moving out of the house. Now, before this, Gary was making a lot more effort to be out, to get out and do things. Gary was frequently going not just to the neighbors, but to the neighbors down the street. And there was a huge effort now not to just keep Gary in the bubble, but to make sure the bubble was protecting the neighbors. There's as much protection of them as it was of our residents.
So that he wouldn't kind of bother the neighbor knocking the door.
Them, right. You know what a problem your kids can be. And with time, Gary pushed on that, and as the VPA came in, we started taking the VPA at face value and getting them out in the community more often, getting Gary to go off to the store. We put everything in place. We put the things in place. We make sure that Gary knew how to, well, Gary already knew how to cross the roads on his own. I don't know where this came from. It just happens. So much of what we do just happens. So as the VPA comes along, we are getting Gary out more into the community. And suddenly Gary is asking not just to be out in the community. Gary wants to be on his own in the community. Gary doesn't want someone standing over his back saying, be careful what you say, don't touch that. Just, I want to be on his own. So.
Now, John, when we were talking earlier, you had told me a story about when Gary goes to the Grove and started going to the Grove pub at the beginning, and how somebody expressed some concerns to you that I think that geez, Gary, I'm not sure Gary should be down here at the pub, right? Yeah. So what did you do?
This is further down the road. We're already at a point where Gary's out on his own. He'd lost his freedoms for a while, and that is a dark chapter in I think my history. This is protectionism.
Right.
So Gary's back now out on his own in the community.
That's right, John.
Almost every night he's out in the community.
John? Yeah. I want some, do you want someone to turn on my mic a little bit louder, please?
It's up, we can hear you.
Yeah, they can hear you. I know it's hard, but they can't hear you, yeah.
Okay, I wanted to make my mic a little louder so you can hear what I'm saying. Okay, everyone?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah, they can.
So, what was I going to say, John?
You were talking about being at the Grove.
Oh yeah, making new friends, introducing myself to some friends I know and love and know so well, and welcome to the Grove Pub Restaurant. I know some friends that work there, and sometimes John meets me there. If John passes me,
This is the great story. Gary's already going to the Grove. He's popping in there, and a number of other bars along Corden Avenue. Gary's careful not to have alcohol because it conflicts with his medication.
That's right, John. You got that right.
He's ready to have someone buy him a Coke any day of the night, any day of the week.
You got that correct there, John. I know, I'm just joking, John. Ha ha ha.
So Gary's going there on his own. We're not aware of that. We're trusting that Gary's going out into the community on his own. Gary comes back to the home and tells the staff.
Where I'm going, where I am?
I was at the bar. First night out, staff are a little concerned. Next night, same story. Comes back with Gary at the bar. I get the call. Gary's at the bar. You better get down there. He's gone back there. So I go, look in. No, Gary, there's no problem here.
No, I have no problem here whatsoever.
No, you got that right.
That's right, you got that, John, right.
The problem is with the staff, Gary.
It's a problem with the staff, hey, John?
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
So the next night, I get the call, come down, yeah, Gary's in there. I don't want to interfere too much. No problem. Walk by, Gary walks out, I walk in. What's the problem here? Are you having any difficulty with that guy there? No, which guy? That guy? No, he's a great guy.
Yes, I am a good guy, you know, everyone. I'm just a good old grand young man. I do all jobs for everyone. I sometimes meet some new friends on the streets and shake people's hands to introduce myself, and whoever I meet, that's good. I can ask them what their names are, and they can ask me what my name is and who I am, where I'm from, where I was born, and what year I was born in, and And April 29th, 1967, I was born in DePaul, Manitoba in 1967. And when I was from DePaul, I moved to One East over here, this right over there. And I stayed there until I moved from that side to Mapleside. And I stayed there until I was 12 years old. And then in 1979, September 4, I moved to 129 Yale Avenue, and I met this guy John here.
Right on. So John's just going to finish the story about what happened at the Grove.
Sure, why not? I don't
Okay.
see why not, can't hurt.
So the team leader goes in and does his due diligence, speaks to the manager, and makes sure that the manager knows that if there's any problem, he can call me. Here's my cell number. He pastes it up on the staff board where everyone can see it, just in case there's a problem. And that's satisfying my concern. Off I go. Next night, I get the call from the staff, get down there. Gary's going to get beat up at that bar. You've got to get him out of there. Okay, so.
But otherwise, I got a saying to say there, John. I'm gonna be speaking, presenting at the conference, and introducing everybody in, and welcoming people in, and bring people in, say hi, how are you, how have you been, what have you been doing, and John, what else am I going to say at the conference?
What's that?
What else am I going to say at the conference?
I think you're going to be introducing people, Gary.
I think so. That's
Just what you said. That's exactly what you're going to
That's
do.
what I did last year when I was there.
That's awesome.
And yeah, by the way, where's this conference going to be at, by the way? Where?
At the Victorian.
Victorian.
Yeah.
And now I know.
You and I,
Yeah.
we have to work together more often
Yeah,
because I think we could do some good marketing.
Good marketing, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Good
'Cause
job, John. Like,
you ask good questions.
I ask good questions, yes
So-
I do.
Gary, can I finish my story?
Okay, go ahead.
So the next night I go down to the home, after hours of course. I ask Gary, let's go for a beer. Let's go down to the Grove. Let's see for myself what the problem is here. I go down to the bar with Gary. This is my local as well. I live not far from there. I go there fairly frequently. I'm ready to walk in there with my good friend and make sure everyone knows who this guy is. I walk in there. I'm just behind Gary. I'm nobody. Everyone's shouting across the bar, "Hi Gary, we haven't seen you in a long time." That's because you haven't been here in a long time. Come in every night and you'll see me.
That's right, I'll see you there. If I don't see you, you come see me there.
Yeah, so I'm just nobody. Gary's being hailed by absolutely everyone in the bar.
Everyone I know and love and know so well, everyone.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's right.
I walk
Thanks,
in,
John.
Gary walks to the bar, picks up the coat that's already placed there for him, walks on into the crowd and starts talking.
And you know what else, John? Sometimes boys, 2 times
There it is.
offers me a piece of carrot cake for a treat.
And he's a guy you got to know at the Grove, and you guys
My
talk.
first time we first met together.
And do you guys talk fairly frequently? Does he?
On the phone mostly.
He gives you a call every day, or you call to talk to
I
him?
leave him a message, and then when I get home, I just pick up the phone and call his number and ask how his day was, how his weekend was, what you've been doing, where you've been, what trip you took in, and what place you've gone to, and what people you've met, and who you've seen, who you met, what you've done in the future. And
Remember when I asked you what it means to be a good friend? That's what it is, what you're doing right now. Yeah,
that's just
great.
what I was just saying.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I want to thank both Gary and John
Thanks, John.
for
Lady.
sharing your experience with us today.
Thank
Can you join me in thanking these gentlemen?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, listening, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you, Gary. Your story is
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in 6 months. I'll probably see you before then, but at the next town hall is about 6 months from now. Have a great day. Enjoy the beautiful weather outside.